Try again. Is that better? Okay, brilliant. Welcome members and officers, and we've got our guest here who I'll introduce a little bit later. Before we start the meeting properly, I'll go through the emergency evacuation announcement. Mark, you'll be checking up on this, obviously. There are no planned fire drills, so if the fire alarm activates, please leave the building in an orderly fashion via the nearest fire exit. The two fire exits through the partition doors are currently not in use due to ongoing works. Therefore, the fire exits are through the main doors of the hall or the storeroom adjacent to the stage. The fire assembly point is the island in front of the main entrance to the building. Please do not delay your evacuation to collect any belongings. Please do not return to the building until given permission to do so by council staff. Please note that the meeting will be audio recorded. Would you please switch off mobiles or turn them onto silent? Toilets and hand washing facilities are available in the foyer area. I can see there are no members of the public, so the announcement pertaining to photography doesn't count. Members, there is a need to use microphones during the meeting. When I invite you to speak, please wait until there is a microphone in front of you before speaking, as microphones are needed for the hearing loop and for the audio recording. These are all switched on and ready for you to speak and will be unmuted by officers, so you do not need to adjust them. Please make sure that the microphone is close to your mouth before speaking, and please speak clearly. Members, voting will be done on a show of hands in line with the Constitution. I will ask for a show of hands for and then against recommendations, and will also ask for a show of hands for those wishing to abstain from voting. Members, I'd like to request that we will stick to the 5 minutes per member for speaking, and this is to allow maximum time and maximum participation from members. So moving on to agenda item number 1, apologies for absence. Apologies have been received from Councillor Mike Wilkinson, Councillor Richard Lambourne, Councillor Bob Milne and Councillor James Newport. Are there any other apologies for absence? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 2, substitute members. Councillor Ian Foster will be substituting for Councillor Bob Milne, and Councillor Jim Cripps will be substituting for Councillor James Newport. So welcome both of you. Agenda item 3, non-members attending. We have Councillor Arthur Williams, Councillor Daniel Efday and Councillor Simon Wootton. So welcome to you all. Agenda item 4 is minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of February 2023. Members, the minutes are not yet available, so they will be taken at the next meeting on the 4th of April. Agenda item 5, to receive declarations of interest and any whipping declarations. Are there any declarations of interest, members? Okay, thank you. Agenda item 6 is an update on the Gypsy and Travellers. Members, there's 2 updates from the Essex County-wide Traveller Unit dated the 25th of November 2022 and the 3rd of February 2023. These have been circulated. Updates are generally sent out when there are encampments within the county. So it's not really a case of asking for something within the Rochford area. If there's been no encampments, there is no report. But members, do you have any questions or observations on the report? Okay, thank you. No one's indicated. Just as a question, would members like to see this perhaps on a quarterly basis, the report produced?
I would, Chairman.
Sorry? Yeah. Okay, so, yeah, okay, thanks, Councillor Foster. So I would ask officers if we could make this available, request on a quarterly basis. Thank you. Members, we've got one recommendation, and that's the Essex County-wide Traveller Unit updates on Gypsy Traveller encampments within the county be noted. Is that noted, members? Okay, thank you. We now move on to agenda item 7, which is the Community Safety Partnership. Before I ask Tracy Lilly, the Director of Communities and Health, to introduce the report, I'd like to welcome Station Manager Mark Elliott, who is the Station Manager for Rochford and Hawkwell Fire Stations. Thank you, sir. You're most welcome. So, Tracy, could I ask you to introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. Oh, that was loud. As members will know, we report annually on the work of the CSP and we bring it to this meeting. It kind of says what it does on the tin in the report itself. As you can see, we get funding from the PFCC office of just over £12,000. It is a joint CSP, and through that amount of funding, we're able to contribute to different projects that you can see in the report itself. I'm happy to answer any questions. One of the things that I just wanted to address for members is it's fantastic having Mark here, but we haven't got the other invitees to this meeting. Unfortunately, they've had to give their apologies due to other commitments. What we want to do moving forward is have a twice yearly meeting where the CSP will come, and that will be senior officers, the PFCC's office, a senior police officer and myself, and we'll have a panel where we'll invite all members to that, and we can present the work of the CSP and also ask questions on the work that's undertaken, because I think it's important to engage with all members on the work of the CSP. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. And also moving forward, I'd like to change the way that we report back to this group, and there will be an appendix to the report detailing more information for members to have a look at, rather than just the stuff that we fund. I think it's important to give members a bit more detail, but happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. Before I ask members if they've got any questions or observations, can I just be clear? Do you still foresee the CSP coming back once a year to be reported at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee?
Yeah, that's a requirement. We were supposed to set up, all CSPs are supposed to set up a crime and disorder committee to overview and scrutinise the work of the CSP, and it's agreed that this committee will do that. So that report will still come back to this committee, but we'll have the twice yearly meeting where all members can ask questions of our key partners.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Reeves.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question, really. The £12,000 odd pounds that we get in grant funding, this is quite a serious area of concern for the area, being the sort of way that society is going these days. I'm just wondering, do you think that that is sufficient? Is that something that, I know that every penny of it has been spent, is that something that you think we should be looking for additional funding on? Are there any projects that would benefit from additional funding? Is that something that the council you think should be looking towards?
Well, there's a can of worms. I'd always like more money, but it is what it is. We get that funding from the PFCC. It's distributed across Essex. Different areas get different pots, but there are other funding opportunities available that we can bid into, and we do that quite regularly. But yeah, we'd definitely like more, but it's about having that clear priority areas that you want to target, a clear kind of direction of where you want that money to be spent. And then what you can do is work with the partners that you have, and you can go out for extra funding. So the PFCC's office offer extra funding for different projects, and it's incumbent on us as a CSP to make sure that we tap into those funding streams that are available.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chairman. Similar subject, really. On 4.2, where it says delivery continues to be dependent on that grant, do we know whether the Police and Fire and Crime Commissioner has actually budgeted for that in this coming year?
Sorry, yes, they have. That comes through every year from the PFCC's office.
Okay. Councillor Mrs McPherson.
Thank you, Chair. Tracy, a couple of things. The priorities for the 2022-23 were identified as domestic abuse, violence against women and girls, antisocial behaviour, violence including knife crime and hate crime, as mentioned on 3.2 and also then on 3.8. Do these mirror the priorities from the PFCC? Yeah, I thought they would do. So have we got the priorities now for 23, 24? That would be my first question. The next one is regarding the grant of just over 12,000. Council leaves several years ago, it was a lot more, trust me. I would like to know, because we are a joint CSP, is that funding per CSP regardless that we are joint? So if we were separate, would we get that amount or would we only get half of that? I.e. if you're a separate district such as Uttlesford, do they just get the same, 12,000, or do they get 6? And how has that been spent across the 2 districts? Then I've got a couple more after those, if that's okay.
In terms of the funding is allocated per locality area. So I haven't been involved in the CSP before now, but you get one pot of money. It would potentially be split if you were not in a merger with Castle Point. So that's that situation. In terms of the priorities, these are the draft priorities that are going to be repeated again this year, but it's for the CSP to make a final decision on whether they will be the final priorities. But I'd hazard a guess that they will remain the same because they're very key priorities and they tie in with the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner's crime plan. Just bear with me, I can't remember the next question.
I think you've just covered it.
Oh, good.
But when you say per locality, so Brentwood is a CSP on its own. Do they get 12,337?
Well, I couldn't possibly comment.
Probably.
Each locality gets different amounts.
Okay, so it is still based on the number of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. The other couple of points I wanted to raise was you mentioned the PFCC separate pot that we can bid for. Have we done that successfully in the past?
I'm not sure what's happened in the past for Rochford, but definitely moving forward, that's something that we will do. I'm very passionate about taking funding that's out there, and I think sometimes it's difficult when you've got a small team, and Andy only works part-time, so yeah, that will be something that we'll be definitely tapping into. And what I would say is a benefit from having the joint CSP is that you can commission services and projects across both areas, so there is a kind of saving to be had there. So it's not, it's quite a positive on occasion.
Okay. Through you again, Chair, as we move forward and that appendix is going to be produced in future to support this report, the other question that you're right, there was one part that you didn't answer. The breakdown of the CSP money would be useful to see how that is spent. And just for noting, 3.4, bar and bus, the provision that you have popped down there is across the district. I'm sorry, I've raised this before. It is not across the district. My ward in sunny Great Wakering has never seen the bar and bus, and they will confirm that to you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any other members? Indicate. Okay. There's. Could I raise just a general point? Really, is that the report's got a number of acronyms in. Would it be possible to have a glossary or an appendix at the back of it, just so that people know what those are?
Yeah, like I said, moving forward, the report will be a lot more comprehensive and concise, and there's always a glossary attached to break down some of those acronyms for you.
Okay, thank you. I've got a question because, and it's for you, Mark. As we've got you in front of us, very often our focus, when we talk about the community safety partnership, the emphasis is often seen to be on the police service. But from your perspective, can you tell us a bit about how the fire service contributes towards that?
Yeah, sure, no worries. Thank you very much for inviting me tonight through Andy. Through the CSP, we've got a number of initiatives. We have volunteers in the Essex Fire Service. We conduct safe and well visits. I've got some figures, if it helps you, from the 1st of November to the 1st of February about how we've gone to education into the schools, and then we've worked with schools with regarding fireworks, cyber safety and gangs. We hit 2,085 young people in the last 3 months in Rochford District and Castle Point with that sort of information. We've conducted 81 safe and well visits. There's trained volunteers who go in and look at burglaries, how to prevent burglaries in the home. We've done home fire safety checks, 53. We do risk-based revisits, where we've been out to people 2 or 3 years ago, then we've revisited them to make sure they're still safe in their homes. We've carried out 16 sensory inspections for people to keep them safe in their home who've required maybe a red flashing light instead of a smoke detector because of their hearing loss, and like vibrating pads under beds, under pillows and things like that. And we've just done various work through that. We've set up something called Fire Stoppers, which is a phone line that people can phone up if there's been deliberate fires in the area and they want to anonymously give information over to that, and then we can sort of work with the police to then sort of track that down. Is that okay? Does that answer some of your questions?
Thank you. Any members? Councillor Reeves, have you got a question for the station manager, sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming tonight, Mark, and thank you for that contribution. The question that your contribution raises to me is that it seems to me that you're doing an awful lot of work there. Is that all covered by the grant that actually is coming out, or is that something that is internal from the fire brigade?
Good question. I could pass you over to my learned colleague. I'm more from the operational side, so managing the fire stations. So I couldn't, with the budget, I think that's just all part of the community safety budget. But there might be some more information that my colleague can give you regarding that.
I'm pretty confident to say that that's actually all part of the fire service ongoing budget, and anything additional to that, because they have a great project within the schools and they do a lot of work. They're not just about the fire service, and it goes back to the report that you will get in future, which will give you, a breakdown of some of the good work that our partners do. But yeah, that is actually funded by the fire service.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. Mark, fire break courses, are they still going? Bearing in mind the hot weather that we've had, there were fires started, I know. I'm just saying down in my ward again because it's quite rural. Are they still going? If they're not, is this something that we could tap into, and this is probably a question for Tracy, with the PFCC funding going forward, that we deliver more of those? Thank you.
Hello, that's it. Yeah, the fire break still is going ahead and everything, but obviously, probably as you know, there's quite a lot of pressure on these courses, and a lot of children want to be involved, and young people want to be involved, and the schools want to have that sort of kudos as well to have it into their schools. So it still goes ahead, but the pressure on the places is quite overwhelming, to be quite honest.
Councillor Constable.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Councillor McPherson's just asked my question for me.
Okay. Are there any other questions or observations? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I would just like to thank Mark for coming along. It's most useful, thank you. And of course, once again, I'd like to thank Tracy. She does an amazing job. Thank you. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, there's one recommendation set out at paragraph 9.1 on page 7.4 of the report, which is to note the progress made by the Rochford District Community Safety Partnership during 2022-2023. Is that noted, members?
Noted, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Station Manager Elliott, thank you for coming. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but if you want to go, that's up to you. But thank you for your attendance.
No, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm for operational availability, so I can go back on the run then as well. So I'm on 24 hours, so I can go back and do the fire calls and everything. But no, it's nice to meet you all. Thank you very much. And
Yeah.
I'll probably...
Thank you for coming. Sorry.
Sorry, one more thing, Chair. So I've brought a selection of fire safety leaflets and information, which I'll leave out. I don't know if you have offices that you want to sort of, but I'll leave it just here for you if that's okay, Chair.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 8, the One Team Transformation Programme, strategic partnership with Brentwood Borough Council, Q4 update. Greg Campbell, the Director of Policy and Delivery, will introduce the report. Greg, over to you. Oh, sorry. Councillor Wood. I thought you would... Sorry, Councillor Wotton, the Leader of the Council, will introduce.
Chairman, thank you very much indeed. It was all designed to confuse you while I was over there, and Yvonne was sitting in this seat. But thank you. Good evening, members. Good evening, officers. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to introduce item 8, which, as the chairman has said, is Q4 update in respect of the One Team Transformation Programme and the strategic partnership. We're just over 1 year into our strategic partnership with Brentwood Borough Council. An awful lot has been achieved in terms of putting the structure in place. Tier 1, Tier 2 and Tier 3 appointments have been made. That is, of course, the Chief Executive, the Strategic Directors and the Directors, 9 Directors. Where we're at the moment is we have 6 permanent appointees to those posts and 3 interim, and that has enabled us to progress with our operations and at least get the structure in place. But there are further interviews planned over the next few weeks to complete the Tier 3 process. The report before you this evening is really looking at service updates. Appendix 1 has got the risks register and risk and issues register, and it would be fair to say that I think part of the integration process is understanding the cultures, historic cultures between Brentwood and Rochford, and picking the best out of those cultures and aligning the two. And I think we should be actually very proud of progress that we've made in a relatively short period of time, because you know, these things don't happen that swiftly, and certainly it's been acknowledged in a number of quarters how well the process is going, the integration, the partnership, and obviously the benefits that we can achieve through financial benefits as well as the integration of delivering service. And as I always say, our principal objective here in the council is to ensure the lives of our residents and businesses are even better than they currently are. So that is the fundamental objective. Chairman, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Wotton. Mr Campbell, is there anything you'd like to highlight on the report?
Evening, Chairman, evening, members. Nothing further to highlight on the report. It is before you to note, but available obviously for questions or anything.
Okay, thank you. Any members wishing to speak? Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chairman. One small question on page 8.4, 3.9, which talks about the face-to-face meetings with staff. It says over 200 participated. Is that 200 out of how many in total, as a matter of interest?
So that is around about 400 in total, Brentwood and Rochford staff in total. So if you think 2 public meetings or 2 face-to-face meetings, one at Freight House was very well attended, one at Brentwood Council was well attended, and then we had an online version for all those who couldn't make it. So that's one of the highest number that we've had to those meetings so far. And there was some good discussion at those meetings, I would say.
Councillor Sharp.
Can you hear me? Is there a date set for the approval of the business case?
So, Chair, sorry, Councillor, is it so the business case is, just so I'm clear, so the expected date of the business case completion is in the third column? So that's when we're expecting the business case to be completed? No, sorry. Yeah, and then after that, once it's done, the implementation gets into place.
And if I can come in there, please, Chairman, just to add to that, we have to bear in mind it is broadly a 24-month programme, and we're about 13 months into it, with the individual services, as Mr Campbell has said, showing the estimated time for completion in that third column. Hopefully that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members wishing? Councillor Mrs Gadsden.
I would just like to congratulate the leader on this initiative of the partnership. I think it's an excellent idea. I'm very impressed with the officers that have joined, and on the whole I think it's going really well and well towards helping the council with its budget restraints. So I think well done.
Thank you.
If I can come back on that point, please, Chairman, and say that clearly the spotlight has been on Brentwood and Rochford nationally, because there are all sorts of partnerships going on. There are few where you don't have adjoining boundaries. And we always made clear at the outset that the sovereignty of Rochford District Council was paramount in all this, as indeed did Brentwood. But my interest is obviously Rochford. But there are many councils now that are looking at the success of our partnership, the benefits that it's providing, and along with our budget, they're actually looking at us with some degree of envy that they're not in a similar partnership given the constraints on local government at the present time. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Any other members wishing to speak? I've got a question, if I may, which is to do with risk management. So if we look at the report with the risks seem to be moving in the right direction. So we had lots of red risks, and we've now moved them down to amber. So is it fair to say that our confidence in achieving this is increasing as we go along?
Thank you, Chair. What I would say is we keep an eye on those risks regularly. Confidence is high that we can achieve what we're setting out to do. We're going definitely in the right direction. We've got the first phase, as you can see in the report, taking those service reviews. We then go into the second phase in May, and I think we're definitely on the right lines to achieve what we have set out to achieve against that agenda.
Okay, thanks. And I've got a follow-up question on risk, which is, have any new risks been identified since the start of the programme?
So we've had a couple of new ones added. The latest one was the ICT one, which was part of the original request. And we were doing that in, I think it was the second or third quarter. We undertook that review with both ICT services, and that has been added, which is risk. My eyes are 25. Thank you, Mr. Summers, whose eyes are better than mine. Yeah, so that was one that was added.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay. In that case, members, we've got the recommendation on the report at paragraph 11.1 on page 8.5. The recommendation is that the committee notes the progress of the One Team Transformation Programme. Is that noted, members? Noted, Chair. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 9, which is the review of improvements within the development management team. Yvonne Dunn, the planning manager, will introduce the report. Yvonne.
Thank you very much. Right, good evening, members, and thank you, Chair. So as you can see, item 9 is report on the review of the improvements that have occurred over the last 3 years in the development management team. And also what this report does cover is what future improvements we intend to actually make to the service. So just to give you a quick overview here is that in October 2019, the Development Management Service within the Council was actually underperforming. We have central government targets that we have to meet with the time that we take to determine planning applications, and there are targets set there. There's 70% of major development, 60% of major applications and 70% of any other application that we have to determine within the 13-week and 8-week timescales for those applications. And at the time, the planning department at Rochford were only performing 70% of major applications and around about 74% on the other types of applications. So we were sort of sailing perilously close to, that target line. So we actually invited the Planning Advisory Service to come in to do an overhaul of the service that was being offered and to actually help us with some suggestions as to how we might look to improve our performance. Now, I will add that the performance was largely due to the fact that we were having been through a very lean period of staff. I think from sort of 2017 to 2019, we'd been down to senior officers and they hadn't been replaced. So would obviously, impact on workload and actually affected our targets and our achievements and our performance. So Planning Advisory Service came in, they suggested a list of improvements that we make. We put those in place and they have over the last sort of two and a half years actually increased our performance quite substantially. We now achieve 100% on major applications within time, and also on our other applications, that's minor and other applications, we're achieving around about 90% in time. So we've made a vast improvement, but also what was included in the review was other suggestions of how we could make our service more efficient. There was quite a long list. We took on probably 70% of those suggestions. The other 30% wasn't really the Rochford way of doing things. We sort of, did consult with various members and other lead officers, and they wasn't keen for some of those suggested changes to occur. So that was in 2019. And then obviously in April last year, we had a further review by a company called Mondrum, which are a non-profit organisation, and they came in and specifically looked at the workload that we had in hand and the amount of resource. And what that actually demonstrated is that the amount of work that we have in progress at Rochford in the planning department was too high for the amount of staff that we've got. So the actual recommendation from that was that there was a case to be made for additional resource, which we have put in a staffing request form for additional resource. But obviously, with the one team service reviews going ahead, then obviously there could be opportunities for efficiencies with the one team where both authorities help each other out with resource. So it's an ongoing situation for us. I mean, as my role as planning manager, I'm consistently trying to look at ways to make the service more efficient, but also to still maintain that quality of service for our customers. We've experienced a period where we were receiving a lot of complaints for the service a couple of years ago, and those complaints have definitely diminished. We still get some complaints, people complain. It's the nature of the beast, unfortunately, in planning. But we've got, in mind further improvements that we want to make, which we've actually put here in the report for your consideration. So I hope that helps. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Any members wishing? Councillor Reeves.
Thank you, Chair. I spoke to Greg briefly before the meeting. There is a bit of a serious issue with our website. at the moment with access to plans. And this is a concern from my point of view, because obviously the public don't have ready access to the planning applications that go in that they legally should have. I know we have a workaround in place at the moment where the public can write in and ask for those plans to be put in, but it's not, I would say, user-friendly at all. This has now been going on since the turn of the year. I realise this is an external problem, but I would like it to go on record that this cannot go on. Something must be done. If this company is not performing, then we should explore ways of actually getting out of the contract and getting someone else into it, because it's just not good enough. Yeah. Thank you.
Before I ask Yvonne to respond, would that fall up? We've got a recommendation which is to improve the customer experience through online improvements and digital technology. Would that cover Councillor Reeves's point?
It's not something that I've got any direct control over. I mean, the recommendation there on the report is more that what the planning department can do to improve the performance. Just to pick up on your point, Councillor Reeves, I have the same frustrations as you have, and the residents. I mean, what we have done is in the last 3 weeks we've created our own web page on the council's website, and we are now every week uploading all the new applications. It's a painstaking process that I have to take an officer out for half a day to do, but we're obviously very concerned that although we were servicing the requests, we've set emailing out plans to residents, excuse me, it wasn't ideal. We admit that. And so what we've done is we've created this additional page on the website. So what happens now is the applicant will go to the original page where they would have actually searched for the application, and on there is a new link that they can actually click on, and then that takes them to where all the latest applications are. It's not perfect. I will put my hands up to it, because you can't search for applications. You've literally got to scroll through to the application number, but it's got the application number and the first line of the address. And on there are the application forms, the documents and the plans. So it's a big improvement to what we was having to work with, over the last couple of months. I don't really know that I'm the right officer to actually give you an update on the situation with the website. It's, it's an IT issue, and I can assure you that our IT team have been working very hard to resolve it, but it's an inherited problem, and they're looking for a fix. But we're confident that what we've put in place now is not disadvantaging any members of the public. They have now got access to those plans.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just request then that the information regarding what you put in place could be circulated to members, because that's the first I've heard of it. So that would be very useful, please.
I will make sure that happens.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a comment and a recommendation, if I may. Propose a recommendation. I refer to page 9.2 under the section Improvements Implemented, and also page 9.3, 5.1. Both talk about interaction and communication with members. The fifth bullet point in 5.1 talks about keeping members informed on planning decisions. I believe it should go further. I understand and accept that officers have the job of agreeing conditions with applicants. However, on large and controversial planning applications, I believe there should be engagement with ward councillors before conditions are finally agreed. Inevitably, I can quote the Bloor development. The construction access in the application for safety reasons was in one location. In agreeing conditions, it was switched to the very place that the application was avoiding for safety reasons. The plan has also allowed HGV movement outside the primary schools from 7:30 a.m. and when in the following hour, literally hundreds of children are crossing the road. My recommendation, therefore, is that on large or known to be controversial planning applications, officers should speak ward councillor comment on conditions, especially if they vary from the planning application. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just ask Sonia to read that back so that everyone is clear, because we'll vote on that. Yeah. Have you got a seconder for that, Councillor Mrs McPherson? Thank you. Do you want me to read it, Sonia?
Yes, officers should seek ward councillor comments on conditions for large and controversial planning applications.
Okay, so the recommendation is for large and controversial planning applications, officers should seek ward councillor comments on conditions, particularly if they vary from the planning application. Is that okay? So that is proposed by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Mrs McPherson. Those members in favour of the recommendation, would you please raise your hands? Okay. And those against? Any abstentions? Okay, so that recommendation is carried. So there are 10 for and 1 abstention. Thank you. Councillor Constable.
Thank you. I'm also pleased to see item 5 on that, which is something I've been asking about for some time now. This mentions all the planning. I seem to feel that the enforcement side of the planning is underfunded. We seem to be able to keep getting in touch with enforcement officers and nothing coming back from them. Is this an area you feel should receive more funding from the council to enable you to be better at the enforcement side of things?
I would love to have more resource, but obviously we've got budget constraints, and I think as part of the one team service reviews that we'll be doing at Brentwood and Rochford, I think obviously enforcement will be something that we'll be looking at. We have done a review of, this committee did a review of the enforcement service in December, I think it was, where we looked at all elements of the enforcement service, and I believe the recommendation on that report was that there was a recommendation that additional resource was actually acquired for the enforcement service. So yes and yes to your questions.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Councillor Myers.
Hello, just referring to Appendix 1 of the report. Just a couple of quick questions, really. I appreciate the report's some 4 years old now. But one of the things it says in there, the staff were on site visit said no way of viewing plans because of the software they had. Is that, question one, has that actually been fixed now? And the second part of that was when some staff could actually see Google Earth and others couldn't, which seemed a couple of really quick fixes, which I assumed would have been fixed by now, but I was just checking, really.
I mean, both of those have been sorted. I mean, what happens now is that at the time we had a couple of tablets that were being used by the enforcement team, and we were looking at whether or not do we get tablets for all the other planning officers. But what they do now, they just download the plans onto their phones when they go out. So, yeah, I mean, it's technology moves fast, doesn't it? But yeah, they do all have Google Earth now on their laptops. But thank you for the question. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Mrs McPherson. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wotton. Yeah, please come. Yeah, please do, yeah.
Chairman, thank you. Just on a couple of points, if I can go to the enforcement point, yes, there are budgetary constraints, but from time to time, this council as a whole sets the level, sets the bar at which we enforce. And obviously there's got to clearly be some correlation between the budget and the level at which we enforce, because you can never have a large enough enforcement team if you're going to enforce absolutely everything. But I think it's important that this council sets the bar. It monitors where we are failing in that bar, if indeed we are failing, and we put in measures to correct that. It is no good actually just saying, well, it doesn't matter. We should set the bar at a certain level, at a reasonable level, and periodically that bar is reviewed by full council. So I think that's a really important point that was raised, and perhaps it is time to review our enforcement measures along with the reorganisation under the one team. So that's the first point. If I can just come in with that. The other point was the point that Councillor Eaves made about the customer experience with our website. Frankly, it is not good enough in the third month of this year to hear that it hasn't been sorted. I was fortunate enough to be sitting next to the portfolio holder for IT. He and I have just had a discussion. It is an outsourced provider that manages that, but I can't with one hand say that I want the customer experience and the dealings for our residents to be first class, certainly equal if not better to other authorities, and then sit here and say that something actually hasn't been sorted within a 3-month period. Certainly I would like it brought up at executive next week when I will have another opportunity in front of officers to see what is going on. These outsourced providers provide a service level, and I expect them to be abided with. Otherwise, we've got to review our outsourced provider. It is not good enough for us to be complacent, and I fully support Councillor Eaves raising it as a point, and you have my total commitment as leader. I will do everything to make sure that that is made better, shall we say. I will put my weight behind that point. Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. I couldn't resist coming in. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say, Councillor Wootton, the overview and scrutiny did do a review of the enforcement and made a recommendation that it is underfunded. Thank you. Yvonne, I'm hoping that this is okay. I would like to make a recommendation that we have an additional report that goes to members on planning enforcement, even if only to ward members, including breaches of conditions.
So the intended performance monitoring that we're proposing will cover reporting on enforcement performance as well. And what we can do is split that. So when we get a case where they haven't complied with a condition, it gets a slightly different suffix. So what we could actually do is break that down into types of cases, if members would find that helpful. Yeah.
I think so, Chair. Yeah, I'd be happy with that. Would it also include timelines? So from when it's reported to when it's actioned to when it's enforced?
We wasn't intending to go into too much detail. What we was going, and this is only proposing, obviously it's, totally up for discussion. It was, number of new cases reported, what those cases were, number of cases that we've closed in that quarter, number of appeals that we're dealing with, outstanding appeals, where we've taken formal action, where we've prosecuted, that sort of higher level. I think if members would find it useful, I suppose I'm just conscious that we don't overload you with lots of information, but if you actually would find detail of how long, when that breach came in and how long we've had it for, I don't know. It could be quite a in-depth report. We can do it, but I just wonder how useful it would actually be.
My thoughts, Chairman, are if there are current enforcement issues going on, if the ward councillors were aware, as we are sort of the eyes on the ground in those wards, it would be good to know about them.
And I think that's a really good point, Councillor Macpherson. I think we'll be happy to report what new cases we've got, and we can identify what wards they've come into, so you'd be able to have a look at a quick glance as to what's occurring in your ward.
Brilliant, thank you.
Sorry, my apologies. What I would add, though, for the committee is that all new cases aren't necessarily planning breaches. So, you know, it's not until we've actually gone out, done the investigation and assessed the situation. So we do on occasion get people that report things that aren't a planning breach. So just be mindful of that when, I mean, I would imagine by the time you get the report through, because it's going to be a quarterly report, you know, we will be reporting that, I'm just trying to think what it'll look like. We'll be reporting that you've had a case in your ward, and it probably would have been closed down if it wasn't a breach. So, yeah, I think let's see what the report looks like, and then if you actually want it to be refined in any way, then please feedback, and we'll do what we can to accommodate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members wishing to speak? Okay, before we move on to the... sorry, yeah, Councillor Mrs Gadsden.
I'd just like to understand, when was the last time the software that you use was updated to reflect changes in work practices or implement changes that would make it easier for you to become more efficient and work in a manner that...
So we use 2 software packages, and they're an external provider, and obviously they do updates. We, as an authority, would then pay for those updates. Some updates are just minor things, so we don't necessarily pay for that update, but then when there's a major change, we do. I think what we will be looking to do as part of the One Team review is align in the software that both local planning authorities use, and my understanding is that the software that Brentwood use is actually more widely used nationally.
Okay.
And I think there will be, there is certainly a keenness from myself and other officers that we follow that same package that's in use at Brentwood. And also, to add on to that particular software package, there's opportunities to use that for greater efficiencies as well. So, yeah.
And obviously that you have some input into this new software or additions to the software.
It's not our directorate, it will be Sarah Bennett. It's her directorate, but I have had conversations with her, and that's definitely sort of the corporate ambition to actually align the software packages for both planning services.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, so before we move to the recommendations, I'd just like to say personally thank you to Yvonne and Phil Drain, the Director of Place, because they've taken on board a lot of the concerns that ward members had. So there were lots of issues there. And they approached it in a very positive and open-minded in the responses that they've given. And what I would say, I can reassure members that the planning department is constantly looking at trying to improve the way that they work. So it's genuine, constant improvement. So thank you. So members, we've got 7 recommendations. We've got 6 recommendations in the report, and we've got Councillor Foster's recommendation, which gives us 7 recommendations. Members, are you happy to take these, vote on these all together, or do you want me to go through each recommendation? On block. Okay. So those members in favour of the 6 recommendations set out at paragraph 11.1 on page 9.4 of the report, together with recommendation 7, which is Councillor Foster's recommendation, which we voted on tonight. Those members in favour, would you please indicate? Okay. Thank you, members. That is unanimous. Moving on to agenda item 10, which is the key decisions document. Members, are there any observations, comments or questions on the key decisions document? Okay, no one is indicating, so we'll move on to item number 11. Has anyone got any comments or observations on the work plan? Councillor Shaw. Sorry, Sharp, sorry.
Yes, I believe there was going to be a latest status report on the local plan scheduled for first quarter 2023. And I don't see anything on there relating to the local plan. So is it possible to have an update on that?
No, it wasn't on our work plan. I mean, it will be on the work plan ultimately when it's produced. Yeah, sorry, Councillor Foster.
A meeting's about to be announced, I think, for the 16th of March for update.
Yeah, and it would then come on to the work plan, Councillor Sharp. So once it's produced, it would then be something that ONS would be looking at.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Foster.
Okay. So I've had a request from Councillor James Newport, and what he's asked for is that a cost of living report be scrutinised by the ONS committee. Now, at the moment, Tracy Lilly produces a bi-monthly report which goes to the executive. And so what my proposal is to add this to the work plan is not to create extra work, but on a half-yearly basis to have a report which is a consolidation of the reports that go to the executive for us to scrutinise and make recommendations going forward. Any members got any thoughts or anything they wish to add to that? Because otherwise I'll add that to the work plan. Okay, no one is indicating. So that's the final item of business. But before I close the meeting, this is actually the last meeting that I'll be chairing because I won't be here in April. So what I'd like to thank all of the members and all of the officers for your help and support and your input over the year. The thing that I find about the Overview and Scrutiny Committee is you only get out of it what you put into it. And so I'm grateful for all of your input. I'd also like it to be formally minuted that I'd thank my Vice Chair, Councillor Mrs McPherson, for her help and support. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scene which people don't see. And then finally, I'd like to formally thank Sonia Worthington and Veronica Siska. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Siska, yep, close enough. For all their help and support. And again, because there's a lot of stuff that they do behind the scenes, which many of you don't see. Just one example is tonight, seeing the station officer there, having the Gypsy and Traveller unit report, is a lot of chasing up for the officers because trying to get information, trying to get visitors to turn up is not an easy task. So thank you all for that. So the meeting is formally closed at 20:29. Thank you, members.
Newcomer, thank Councillor Wilson for his support and efficient chairmanship of this particular subcommittee.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right, that's it. All done.